Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today, we're going to have a look at the after show of a debate that Ian Chen did versus Kent Hovind. Now, Kent Hovind isn't in the after show, he doesn't attend after shows. This was on Grayson's channel, where he certainly wouldn't attend, but I will include the link to that debate in the description. And of course, the link to Grayson and Ian Chen, if you haven't heard of him, is another Australian debater who has a really, really great sense of humor and likes to poke Kent Hovind with sort of just jabs and little insults and sort of use things to make him very upset. So I really like Ian. He's a really good person. Of course, I'll include his channel and Grayson's channel and everybody who participated. Dr. Chris Thompson was there as well, who is an amazing guy, and I will include his channel as well, of course. And Atheist Junior popped in for a sec. But it really was a strange after show until Sunflower got there. We were just talking about the sort of debate and what Kent does and how we deal with him and the usual stuff. And then Sunflower popped in to discuss just random things, as Sunflower does. But I thought it was quite interesting, quite funny. So I will include it in this Room Rumble. I hope you enjoy, and all the links will be down below. And do check out Ian Chen, as he has a fantastic sense of humor and does some really funny stuff. Thank you so much, and let's get ready to rumble.
We have Ian here with us to start off.
Hi.
And we have Mark joining us. So first of all, I want to just say, Ian, that was epic, man. That was honestly one of probably my favorite debates I've seen with Kent Hovind, to be honest. I thought that was hilarious.
No, thanks for that. I couldn't get in a lot of the kind of preparation. Sorry, Mark, on.
That picture of him behind bars, that cracked me up. That
yeah,
actually made me laugh hard. Like, I've got to
there
admit.
were so many good moments.
Like, dude, I almost spat my coffee over that. I swear. I was like, that is, yeah. But the thing is, here's the thing. Uneven moderation, right? Let's address the elephant in the room. Uneven moderation. And I guess I don't notice it in my debates, but I noticed it in this one. Like, when Kent was talking, Donnie would make Kent's face full screen, but he didn't do that for Ian, kind of thing, right? Which is kind of, okay, a small thing, but what are you doing? Like,
I honestly didn't. I honestly didn't even notice, Mark. I didn't even notice. But
well, you probably wouldn't. It was probably like the stream side rather than the StreamYard side kind of thing. Was probably the YouTube side. Maybe it was done on, but the insults as well. Like, he sort of said, "Oh, you're smarter with this hat on," kind of. And it's like, dude, you were just complaining about ad homing, and then you will go ahead and do it. And this is what Kent does all the time. He'll go like one topic at a time, and then he'll talk about multiple topics. He'll sort of say, "Oh, no ad homs, but your ideas are stupid, and people are stupid for believe." And it's like, you just like, this is the kind of thing that just shows that he can't abide by what he demands, and I found that in the past with him. It's very dishonest, incredibly dishonest.
I've got to give it up to Ian as well. Dr. Dan is down in the live chat, and he's calling this out. This is one of my favorite moments of the whole debate, just in terms of like less so in entertainment value, but more so just in like, wow, you really got good there. And I knew even SFT was reading that and going, oh crap. When you started bringing up the different foxes and the canines versus the number of chromosomes that they have, and he just fled right to human chromosome 2. He literally had nothing. It was beautiful, man.
All I wanted to show is that he has, he doesn't apply his knowledge uniformly. Like, he'll say something to prove his point, and then once he contradicts it, he'll say something different to prove a different point by using the opposite of data. So that's all I was trying to show.
Oh, and somebody in the comments, one of the first things that you mentioned, I just want to say, I love how you like peppered in those little insults and like the little jabs. That was so funny, because I was worried about how this was going to go, because you had told me you kind of want to let Kent have it, and I was like, how are you going to get around the moderation there?
Like,
and I thought you handled it masterfully. But somebody in the comments is asking, one of the very first things that you brought up was the arrest of Kent's. He says, "Oh, that's not my best friend." So he took umbrage with you describing you as his best friend. But let's just say a very good friend of Kent Hovind's was arrested this last week. So do you want to talk about that at all to give the context for some people?
I got a link. I can put it in the chat if I'm wrenched.
Perfect. Yeah,
it's
it
a
was
guy
pretty
by the name of
hilarious for
Chris
those that
Jones that,
didn't hear the
that
news.
Kent has known for
Oh,
like
I'm not
25 or
wrenched.
28 years. Can you guys hear me?
Give me
Yes.
wrenched.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on.
It's just someone that Kent has known for long. I don't know if it's best friend, but it's definitely a very close friend. Now he's been accused or he's been convicted of child sexual abuse and harassment. I think in the past, the issue is that Kent always lets him on into DAL and causes a lot of consternation amongst the DAL people in there as well. Just I think last week, the same guy, Chris Jones, his name, has been arrested for 6 counts of kiddie fiddling again. So Kent always defends him, and he's now been arrested. He hasn't been convicted yet, but he's been arrested of 6 counts. So it's not looking good. And I just want to kind of point out that well, it was going to lead to a whole thing about morality, but
6 counts. I didn't know it was 6
Yeah.
counts. Oh God.
I'll just put the link in private chat because I can do that. So Atheist Junior has an excellent stream on the whole situation. The problem for Kent is that this guy showed up at his compound, let's call it a compound. And a lot of people at the DAL, the Dinosaur Adventureland that sort of Kent lords over, sort of said, we're not happy with this. We know of his past. We don't want him here. He's a predator, and we don't want him to be around our kids, because he came into the compound with a young boy kind of thing. And I won't give his name, but he came with a young boy who he sort of told her mother he'll take him to Dinosaur Adventureland, have a fun time. Now, Kent was adamant that he gets to stay, and he set him up with the room. So as far as how much those charges can be leveraged on Kent, because he sort of facilitated that, is up in the air at the moment. So Kent, the master thing of doing that, Ian, is that must be worrying Kent right now.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Chris.
Oh, hello, Dr. Chris. How are you doing?
Dr. Chris. First time I've been on a stream with him. Hello. I really love your stuff, Dr. Chris.
Hello, guys.
Yes, same here.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, nice job, Ian.
Oh, no, thank you. I learned from you guys.
To see the whole thing. You're very humble, but you know, like, you came up with a great answer for the sexual selection part at the end, and it's a challenging one to deal with. But your answer was basically right. So
I'm not an expert.
I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I'm not an expert in any of this. I just kind of recall, like, I have to say, like, and this is how I approach the debate. Mark Reid, Grayson, yourself, obviously, PhD, etc. You guys know the science much better than me. I've got a master.
You're a doctor too, Ian. Don't
I am.
In
biblical studies. In biblical studies. That's all.
Right.
And I bought my doctorate. That was the whole point of the job. I actually did buy one. And if you look at Rockville University, they actually closed down. So it's full on degree.
It was so funny when Kent actually called you a doctor tonight too. At least he's consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did say I'd call him a doctor, but I lied. I wasn't going to call him a doctor back. So look, honestly, in these kind of debates, you've got people like Grayson, you've got Mark Reid, you've got yourself. Like, there's obviously Dr. Chris yourself. You guys know the science. I know Dr. Chris. You have a PhD in science, but Mark and Grayson are, to me, like autodidacts. You guys know the science much better than me. I'm not gonna play in that space because I can't do as good a job explaining it as Grayson and Mark Reid. So I'm gonna play it to my strengths, which is I'm just gonna troll the fuck out of him. That was basically the point of the debate. It was just to kind of show people how dumb and silly he is, because that's probably where my skills are. Because I'm just not good at the science. I might know a little bit about it, but you guys can do that far better than I, and I'll leave that to you.
No, Ian, you played him like a fiddle tonight. Honestly, it was awesome.
But there was some major hits in there. Like the thing what he said would, I think foxes can all red foxes and grey foxes can't interbreed. Like they can't.
No. And when you look at the South American canids, which are incredibly varied, right, and they are, but none of them can interbreed. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
but they're all
the
part of the
hilarious
same
thing
kind.
is that and I tried to get him on this whole kinds thing in my first debate with him, but Ian, I thought you did a much better job because at one point you actually got him to admit, like you were bringing up the actual biblical examples of like creepy crawly kind and beast kind and flying kind, and
That's what it says in the Bible.
Yeah, exactly. He admitted that those are kinds. And then it's like, but wait, not all birds can interbreed.
Bats are in the flying kind.
Yeah, exactly. So within the things that the Bible is calling kinds, there are things that are not interfertile.
Yeah. Well,
so
it's
his
in Genesis
only criteria,
20:21.
so his only criteria is not sufficient.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Let the oceans or seas or whatever it is bring forth swimming creatures after their kind. If I were to read that literally, to me, a swimming creature is a kind that then hyperspeciated to all the different what he calls kinds. But that's my literal reading of the Bible. If you want to be literal, that's what it is. Living creatures is therefore a kind. Ergo, the Bible is actually stating they agree with evolution. Right. That's what I was trying to say.
Well, it can be interpreted in so many different ways, Ian. That's the thing. Like, because the the original language wasn't English, you could, when you were sort of saying pluralization isn't there, it's like, yeah, it depends on the translation you're using. It depends on, what kind of inference you're making from it. And that's the problem. It can be like read any way that you really want, right? But it's just you really. I mean, I noticed that when you started to pin down, hey, these foxes can't interbreed, and they can't interbreed with dogs, so they're not a kind under your definition. He just said, well, I'm not here to defend kinds. Let's go on to something else. I thought that was like, yeah, he can't. Like, you absolutely smacked him one, because he could not actually say, well, those things are kinds, because he's already said kinds bring forth, or they can breed together. Basically, that was his definition.
And the typical creationist response is a more sophisticated creationist response is going to bring up the concept of ring species, the fact that you can have, say, species A can interbreed with species B, and species B can interbreed with species C. Therefore, now we have a kind, but A cannot interbreed with C. There are examples of this, but within the kinds, as far as creationists call them kinds, there are plenty of examples where there's zero like ring species. Within bears, for instance, which is the example I brought up with my debate with T-Rock, pandas are one of the bears. Panda's not going to interbreed with like an Arctic, a polar bear and a brown bear and a grizzly bear. They are a distinct outgroup of the bear kind, quote unquote, and they don't interbreed with any of the other bears.
They barely interbreed with themselves.
They can barely breed with themselves. Exactly. Yeah.
What's hilarious is I've heard them try to sort of dance around this and try to modify it, saying, oh, a kind is something that can like produce its own kind that's interfertile, or was once for interfertile. Sure. So then they're saying, oh, okay, at one point in time, if it was interfertile. So then he sort of touched on that tonight, but kind of danced around it when he was talking about Chihuahuas and Great Danes. But there's lots of examples, because I've seen people bring up speciation to him where like, hey, like they used to be interfertile, but then a speciation event happened. And now these two that you used to consider a kind, like last week, now they're not interfertile. Now they no longer meet your definition of a kind. And he say, oh, well, they're still obviously the same kind. They just had a mutation and now they're not interfertile. It's like, well, that was your one criteria.
Right. And now you're basically talking about evolution at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, they admit speciation happens. They acknowledge that. They say, oh, that's microevolution.
Yeah.
And another really good question is, if evolution is not true and it's just separated into kinds, why can things interbreed but their offspring are infertile? Like, how do you get these species that, like horses and donkeys, for instance?
Yes, donkeys with mules, exactly.
I was trying to explain that, Mark, in terms of evolution is a spectrum. Like if they're closely related, then it's more likely that they'll have an offspring, and it's more likely that the offspring is fertile. But as you get more and more divergent on that spectrum, then the question becomes, well, maybe they're not as likely to interbreed, and if they can interbreed, it's very unlikely that they can. So it's not a hard and fast, and that's why I try to describe it as it's a non-biologist answer. So Dr. Chris, don't reach out and kind of choke me.
No, that's 100% right.
Basically, to me, It's how likely it is that you can share genetic material between each other, right?
That's
Yeah.
exactly
therefore
right.
that's the
And
spectrum.
the more distance that last common ancestor, you still may be able to get a viable offspring, but that's completely infertile. The mule is a great example of that. Within the group of animals that I work with, the African clawed frogs, I work with the species known as the Xenopus laevis, which underwent a genome duplication relatively recently, like within the last 10 million years. There's a sister species known as Xenopus tropicalis, which has half the number of chromosomes. Very interesting and fascinating. They can actually interbreed, which is interesting. Now, the offspring are completely infertile because if you imagine if you're going from 4 sets of chromosomes and an animal that has 2 sets of chromosomes, the only way that that can work is now you have 3. So now they don't actually pair off. And so that animal cannot interbreed in any kind of way. But the really cool thing about it is that the only way that you can make them interbreed is if you use a laevis as the mother, which will mean that she has the centromeres that are and the machinery to allow to pull apart more than 2 pairs of chromosomes. And then the father has to be tropicalis. And then you can get a viable offspring that can survive till adulthood, but it's completely infertile. If you use a tropicalis, the one that only has half the number of chromosomes as the mother, the machinery that's part of like allowing for chromosome segregation as cells are dividing is too inefficient in dealing with three sets of chromosomes. And so now it can't split apart and it only can divide, like the cells can get up to like 64 cell stage and then it just starts falling apart.
Yeah, if we apply that logically to Kent's definition of kinds, as in things that can breed with each other, then the female and male of one species or the 2 species are a kind, but reverse them and they're suddenly not a kind anymore.
Exactly.
And this is what I've thought about before. And I've thought, okay, with my example with mules and stuff, what it means under Kent's definition, if it always comes out infertile, then the 2 parents are of a kind, but the offspring is not a kind with anything else because it can't bring forth anything.
Yes. And it's going to end that generation. And the frogs I'm talking about are a great example of this, but even with that bizarre aspect of you having to pick the right female from the certain species in order to make it work. You know, in order that female egg that has all the machinery to allow for the to control for chromosome segregation during mitosis, it has to be able to accommodate at least 4 copies of every chromosome, and it can easily handle 3. But if you use the one that only has the 2 copies of every chromosome, it can't handle it, and it just goes haywire, and then the cells fall apart.
So I have a bit of a question about these interfertile hybrids, and more. It's a small question. It's mostly a story, but Ian, you brought up ligers in the debate, lions and tigers. I think maybe Kent brought it up first. Does anybody know if ligers are fertile or are they more like mules where they can't carry on? Does anybody
believe ligers are fertile? I think they are.
Okay, so
I think they have the same number of chromosomes between the tiger and the lion. So I think they are. I'll double check it though.
My story about ligers is pretty good. It's really quick, but did anybody watch the Tiger King documentary that was like a phenomenon on Netflix during the quarantine? Yeah, so I met the Tiger King and went to his zoo back in 2015. It was like a random stop. I almost got into an accident on the highway, and I just noticed like the nearest exit was the Tiger Zoo, and I didn't know about the Tiger King at the time. This is 2015. This is way before the documentary. I was like, oh, that's cool. Let's go check that out. And so I went, I looked at it all. It's a crazy story, but the main thing I wanted to say was that he told me something that did not come up in the Netflix documentary. He told me that he was doing a breeding program, right? He showed me his liger cubs. He had a bunch of liger cubs. They were adorable, fun to play with. But he said that he was specifically, like his goal in his breeding program was that he thought that he could take different strains of big cats like lions and tigers. And he thought that if he got the right combinations, the right pedigrees, and kept crossing their hybrid offsprings, eventually he was convinced, and he told me that he could breed back a saber-toothed tiger. I'm not even making that up. I don't know how it didn't get to the Netflix documentary, but nobody brings it up in the documentary. But he told me that was his goal.
Okay,
But
so
somehow there's a
male.
secret code for the Saber-tooth tigers between the two. Oh
Yep.
my god, that is so funny.
So this is a good example of somebody that is not a creationist,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah.
has absolutely no idea how evolution works.
Right. Male ligers have lower testosterone levels and sperm counts, so they're usually, if not all of them, are infertile. The females are capable of reproducing with either a lion or a tiger. But the problem with ligers, and just looking at this, is it does bring up that they get really a lot of birth defects and a lot of problems sort of that come up between breeding these sort of species that have been so distantly related. Something I wanted to bring up, did anybody else notice the definition of species that Kent brought up? Because us evolution guys in the chat just went wild because it said simple definition of species, right? It actually said simple on it. And we went, hold on a second. He's not using like a university definition or a scientific definition. He's using a very simplified definition, that's told to children. Like his graphs are children's graphs, like his diagrams are from children's educational books, not from any kind.
That's where he gets all his resources on evolution. Yeah, from grade school.
So specifically from children's textbooks from the 1980s and 90s.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, which is kind of like, I mean, people have told him this, and he just refuses to update it. Just says no. I'm going to use these.
Faith, obviously,
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
I know you guys have experienced this before, but this is because I've only debated him twice. It's interesting to me how when I've explained something to him, and then half an hour later, it's like you just wasted your time, and he goes straight back to the original definition. And I kind of sit there and go, do I even bother explaining it again? And then I just kind of give up and just go, don't worry about it. No. He does it, obviously. Either he's stupid or he does it purposely. Either way, he's not.
It's not for him, Ian. It's for the people in the audience, And if you can point out, hey, and you did this debate, you said, hey, I just explained this a while ago, how that is incorrect kind of thing. And I think that sort of calling Kent out, you've really got to harp on where he's being dishonest, where he's, doing these ad hominems and slipping them in, yet saying that you can't, where he has like changed the definition of kind, really pin him on that. You said kinds were things that brought forth under their kind. Now you're saying it's not. So let's go back to this definition and don't let him get away with it, because he'll say, oh, we're not debating kinds. Let's go off something else. No, you've made a claim about kinds. You've got to pin it down.
I also don't think Ken understands what the definition of ad hominem means anyway.
He clearly doesn't. He kept using it as basically just an insult. Any insult is an ad hominem.
It's definitely an insult. It wasn't an ad hominem, though. I definitely insulted him.
Insult is part of it, right? But it's a little more subtle than that. No, of course he doesn't understand that.
And he committed the etymological fallacy about definitions when asked about the scientific method.
Science, I saw that. Yeah.
He keeps wanting to define science based on like the etymology of the word science. Like he's like, well, the Latin root is "percere," meaning knowledge. Yeah. He said that like literally 3 times tonight.
Was it me or he doesn't understand what a scientific method was? I was sitting there and I was confused with his explanation of the question was simple: define scientific method. And I was like, that's not the scientific method. What are you talking about? Like, it's ridiculous.
Honestly, Ian, one of my favorite parts was really early on, and unfortunately, I don't think you did a really great job of like holding his feet to the fire and really like making sure that you tried to get him to address some points, like with the kinds, and you did that a lot later on. And I get in the very beginning, you weren't trying to make a big point of it, but I kind of do wish that you would try to get him to answer it a little bit, because I thought I'd never heard anybody bring this up to him. And I thought it was so funny when you said like, hey, well, that like fair hair and like blue eyes are like a result of mutations and degeneration from like dark hair and black eyes. So like you try to get him to admit that I
wanted him to admit that I was genetically superior to him, because he believes in genetic entropy, and that's a loss of information. Right? So.
That was perfect.
But he was quiet.
I really wish that he had like addressed it in some way. Like he just kind of skipped past it and went back onto his script. But I thought that question was so funny, dude.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not personally up to date on all of Kent's arguments, but doesn't he believe that all mutations are negative or something like that?
Yeah.
So like if you have blue eye mutation or some kind of hair mutation, that kind of destroys that point altogether because it's basically neutral in its effect.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Andrew, you don't need to have heard any more than one debate or lecture from Kent Hovind.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so there's nothing to be up to date on. If you haven't heard it yet,
Right.
that means you're not up to date. But if you've heard it 20 years ago, as I did when I was in graduate school, I went to 2 days of Kent Hovind lectures. It hasn't changed.
Yeah, he literally has not updated at all.
I think I'm
also wanna
personally
say,
too courteous in these matters sometimes.
Yeah, comment from Stupid Horror Energy. She came up with a lot of great questions during the
Yeah.
debate. She always usually does.
Yeah,
And
but
here
she
she's
comes up
asking,
with questions I don't even know the answer to. It's just too complicated. It just makes me look
Right.
dumb.
So,
Thanks,
here she's
SWE.
asking, do you think Kent resents that the last common ancestor of the living primates has been a small insect-eating prosimian resembling a modern mouse lemur? I don't think Kent resents it because I think he completely rejects it and doesn't believe in it at all. So I don't think he resents the whole evolution religion, which was also a funny question where you were asking him, do you think that anyone that teaches evolution should be tax exempt? Which was
Yep.
a great
Oh,
question.
did you
If
ask
evolution is a religion, then I mean,
If
it
he wants
should
it
be
on a
tax
level playing field, we've got to make it a level playing field, right? That's
Yeah.
obviously-
So you were asking
Right.
some things that I genuinely have not heard people ask Kent before, which I really appreciated and made for some really funny moments, even when Kent refused to engage with them at all.
Yeah.
That sounds like you handled it really well. I only caught the Q&A part. I missed the main part of the debate.
Yeah.
But
If
yeah,
you get
I
a
think
chance to listen to it, I try to pack quite a lot of trolling comments.
right. And I listened to when I saw that you were going to be doing this, I went back to listen to your original debate with him, and I think what I saw tonight, you kind of adapted to that a bit, and at least the bits that I saw, like you hammering on the kinds part. But the thing with Kent, it's like there's no point in trying to take it serious. It's no, I mean, most creationists are not good faith interlocutors, but at least some of them will sort of take the argument somewhat seriously and go back and forth a bit. He is just a broken record. It doesn't matter what you say to him. It's not like he listens to anything that you're saying. So if you can use it to just kind of point out how ludicrous he is, and just so for the giggles, that's a good debate, I would say.
I think at most he listens to what you, or partially listens to what you say, but takes kind of buzzwords from out of context. And, okay, go to the script.
That's
from
exactly it.
You can see every time he was talking, he was flipping through his slides. It's like he heard something cows and he's like flipping through his slides.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
doing
actually
that, that's a good
Atheist Junior, Atheist Junior, who joined, he has made a hilarious video. I'm pretty sure. Where didn't you edit together all the various times where people have asked Kent about Chlamydomonas?
Yes.
And he says, I'll look into that. And it's literally just like a highlight reel.
Oh, really?
I'll be
Nice.
sure to look into that.
Yeah,
This is the first time
I
I've heard of
did.
that. I'll look into it.
Because that's
How long's
why
that been?
the third time I debated him, if you want to call it a debate, when I went on the Brett Keane channel and I was debating for YECs at once, which Grayson has done before, I think. And I got mad because Kent said I'll look into this. And this is when I started telling Kent, no, you won't. You're lying. You're just a liar.
Yeah.
Stop lying. Because I have a video and it's called, I'll link it. It's called Kent Hovind Denies Multicellularity for 3 years straight. And it's 5 different debates where everybody brings up literally the same exact paper. And he's always like,
I brought it up. Yeah, I brought it up, and he said, I'll look into it. He did the same with endogenous retroviruses as well. He was like, I've never heard of this before. And it's like, wait, I saw a debate where someone literally showed you where they are, and he was like, I've never heard of this before in my life. And it's like, wow, that willful ignorance is powerful stuff.
That might just be his age. But I don't think I mean, it's not an excuse.
I don't think
but
so.
The hilarious. I think AJ has brought it up. Chlamydomonas, you've brought it up. I've brought it up. It's like a rite of passage at this point to bring up to Kent. But I thought what was really funny was that he used to deflect with chromosome 2 fusion, and he used to say, "Oh, I'll have to look into that." But now it's funny. he'll bring up chromosome 2 fusion when it's not even the topic at all, and it's not relevant. Like with tonight, when Ian brought up the chromosomal differences between.
I noticed that he adopted all of Donnie's dumb arguments.
Yeah, and he hears,
don't you expect the whole telomeres to be there? Like, well, that's not. Like, dude, no.
Well,
which is kind of funny because, like, going back to ERVs, what him and SFT being best buddies, so to speak, wouldn't he have adopted some of those arguments as well? I don't know.
Hey, can I just
he
make
basically read Donnie when I first brought it up? He said his argument was Donnie wrote a book about that.
Like, I have that book.
To the moderator's book.
I actually have Donnie's
That's
book.
what he did.
Oh,
yeah.
R.I.P.
I don't know why he gave that man money, but he sent me a copy.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? There's a Justin.
I didn't get a copy.
I think there's a Justin ATO on the chat that basically asked me to repeat my last dig at Kent about the body slams. So I had this whole thing which I wanted to kind of mention to Kent that, hey, this is an opportunity to be kind of being respectful. Obviously, I wasn't being respectful, etc. I identify myself as a man. My pronouns are he and him. What should I call you? Do you identify yourself as a man or woman? And that was going to lead him to him saying, I'm a man, blah, 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 whatever. And then I was going to say, okay, that's strange because, a real man would never body slam his wife. And therefore I just assume you identified yourself as a woman. A real man would never throw his first wife under the bus to get a lighter prison sentence. So that's why I just assume you identified yourself as a woman. That was where it's going to head, but I got shut down. But I managed to get at least half of it out.
Oh man, I mean, it was a mic drop moment for sure.
That's brutal. Wow.
Yeah. And he saved it for the end too, so it was like the little bow at the end. It was just the perfect little.
Hey, AJ, could you maybe cut that out and just send it to our good friends like Fox and Daria and stuff? Because I agreed to this second debate on Kent because I was so infuriated with with how he treated them. And
how he treated Daria was disgusting.
Yeah, exactly.
That was terrible.
It was my way.
I did a couple videos about that.
Yeah.
No,
but it's weird that he brought up morality. Like, how can somebody like Kent decide that bringing up morality is a good idea, considering the amount of situations that man has been in?
Right.
He's one of his best friends has been arrested, probably going to jail for a long time.
Really, not best friend.
Well, he was.
Well, I said one of his best friends. Like. If he's
distancing himself now, he says we're not even best friends.
He can't possibly do that because he stood there and said to the entire compound of Dinosaur Adventureland that he is a really good friend and gets to stay anytime he wants, and basically told everybody in the compound to go to hell if they don't like his friends, kind of thing. So. That will have to be an incredible run of distancing that he'll have to do, kind of thing, to get out of that one. But other stuff, like a kid died at his park, and there's a litany of stuff. He cheated on his taxes, there's a litany of stuff.
Prison to that structuring payments, but then so I remember when I had seen his lectures 20 years ago. There was one of his series of lectures that was about Satan's plan for a new world order, the whole lecture about that. And so I went on a deep dive trying to find this video, and I ended up finding it. I made a video just last week, kind of picking bits and pieces. But one of the parts of that lecture, I remember from 20 years ago, was that he was talking favorably about the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which for those of you that don't know, this is a forgery that was put together in the late 1800s, early 1900s, published in Russia in the early 1900s, and has been like the core document that's been used just trying to portray Jews as having this like international vast conspiracy to control the world and create a whole new world order, and was like core to like the Nazi. I
think it was actually used as a textbook in some places.
Yes. So I have a video on my channel. A super clip of that. And then I had a commenter come on my channel saying that he had found a clip more recently of him saying something very disparaging. And you know what? I might even find it. Do you guys want to watch it? Can I?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm on board.
I made a short out of it.
That'd be great. Good. Hey, there's one thing I tried to do, but it was very unsuccessful. But I try to do it based on, when Grayson and Mark Reid and AJ kind of gets together and you kind of do debate after show reviews and stuff. And one of the things that you guys always comment on is that we need to try and pin down Kent on him providing his evidence for creation. So I try to do it with the focus of this presentation being my biggest evidence is to prove that you're wrong. But it wasn't as successful as I thought. But I try to do that. I do listen to you guys when you kind of chat. But yeah, unfortunately, that did not.
So, burden of proof in debate, it's kind of difficult because if you go into a evolution on trial, which is, Hovind's favorite topic, because he will not do creationism. He will not touch it with a 10-foot barge pole. But what he will do, and I noticed he did in this debate, which kind of made me a little annoyed, was that he said, oh, we're not going to debate my worldview. But at the end, he'll bring up slides saying God's creation, God did this, God did that. So he he's very dishonest. He uses that argument, but he won't actually.
I tried that.
Oh, I know.
Best evidence for evolution, and then trying to say my best evidence for evolution was to show you're wrong. But it didn't bite. I was kind of cognizant of what you're saying, but it didn't bite as much as I thought.
I get you, Ian. But I've asked before, time and time again, for Donnie to do evolution versus creationism. Hovind will not touch. He will not go anywhere near defending his own beliefs, and he makes up this excuse of, but I'm not asking it to be taught in schools. But he's still, during the debate, making claims. So even if it's just a claim, God did this, you should be able to back up that claim in a debate. Right. So you basically making these statements of fact, or you see them as statements of fact, without actually backing them up with anything, is sort of incredibly dishonest in a debate, regardless of what the debate's about. Because if the debate's about evolution, you shouldn't be bringing up God, because that's not part of the debate.
Taught in schools or not, anyway.
It doesn't matter whether it's taught in schools. It's the topic of the debate. You're changing. Right, But, I mean, Kent does not seem to have any conscience when it comes to what is fair or what is sort of, equal for both people. He seems to think of this as an advantage. He just gets to have this advantage, so he'll take it, whether it's right or wrong. And this is why I'm amazed he brought up morality, because his sense of morality is so skewed and so bad. It's horrifying.
Right.
That's why he feels comfortable bringing it up. But if I could just add on to something you said, Mark, I think it is unfair because this is something I've been noticing recently too, is that Kent says that he doesn't want to argue about the Bible or his worldview in an evolution debate, but then he challenges you to say, to show me one kind producing a different kind. Well, if you're going to be arguing about biology and science, and you bring in these terms that are found in the Bible, you can't then say, well, don't ask me to define kind, or don't ask me to argue for my own worldview. Yeah. It's not fair. You know what I mean? It's like a double standard.
Yep.
For sure. So do we want to check out this video of Kent Hovind's anti-Semitism?
Is Kent an anti-Semite?
Does it have sound?
Are you in Chrome?
Yeah, I'm not hearing any sound.
It's not.
Are you in Chrome? Are you using Chrome?
Can you not hear it?
No.
It's playing, but I can't hear.
Can you not hear it?
No.
Okay.
No. Are you using Chrome, Grayson? Grayson.
I am using Chrome. I thought you were asking Dr. Gray.
No. Who's sharing it?
I'm sharing it.
Okay, are you using Chrome, Dr. Chris?
I am, yes.
Did you tick the box that said include audio when you shared the screen?
No.
Okay. Well,
let's try it again.
Maybe keep it. Should be down the bottom of the share because I have stuff that's
okay, let me do it
a million times. Like, don't worry about it. I've done this.
The stream settings.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Share audio tab. There we are. Okay.
Yeah, that should work.
Hopefully you see that. Okay.
Several good books, for instance,
okay, perfect.
Is young Earth creationist an anti-Semite? The anti-Semitic document, the protocol.
Skipping for me.
YouTube has been real laggy today.
For global domination.
Satan's using all to accomplish his goals, trying to build his one government several books, for instance, The Protocols of Zion. Again,
Yeah, sorry, Dr. Chris, but we couldn't really understand the audio.
Have you uploaded that to YouTube, Dr. Chris?
Yeah, it was on YouTube. I think YouTube servers have just been messed up today.
Well, let's just have Grayson play it. That's fine.
It's now.
I mean, I noticed
working?
that Dr. Chris is frozen.
Yeah, let me just.
Yeah.
Send him the link.
All right. Why don't you find?
Okay.
Can you find it? It's my most recent video.
Got to stop those torrents, Dr. Chris.
Guess so. Exactly.
Well, I'm gonna
My
embarrass
anime
myself here. Yeah, I'm gonna just.
I'm sorry, my legal Linux ISOs. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna embarrass myself here because honestly, I don't know how to play a video. I usually just share other people's videos as they're played. That's kind of all I know.
Well, I can't because I'm in Firefox. I'd have to leave and come back.
Put the link in the private chat to the video.
There we go. I'll do that. Good idea.
Yeah, sorry.
We actually play it.
It seems like there's too many people on the panel that are a little bit technologically inept when it comes to StreamYard.
Yeah.
Mark can't really get us all through.
Carry it on a stick.
I'll try to share it. We'll see if that works.
Yeah. AJ
lots of people in chat talking about Hitler and PZ Myers.
What did PZ Myers do now?
Just Stupid Whore Energy was saying that PZ Myers is a masterful debater. Too bad he retired. And then Nephilim Hunter saying PZ Myers had a master plan. Just read the biology book to Kent and his whole script just unravels.
Okay, add my screen share,
yep.
Grayson. Okay.
Is young Earth creationist Kent Hovind an anti-Semite? Let's look at the evidence to find out. First, here's a clip of Kent pushing the anti-Semitic document, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a fraudulent propaganda tool used by the Nazis to fool people into believing that there is a vast Jewish plan for global domination.
Satan's using all sorts of different people to accomplish his goals of trying to build his one world government. I recommend you read several good books, for instance, The Protocols of Zion. If you can't find that, that lays out the plan for how they're going to rule the world. Fascinating book, about 80 pages on the plan to rule the world. And they're just telling, here's how we're going to do it. Got to read about the Protocols of Zion. Tremendous. This is from the people who, this is their plan to rule the world. It's all spelled out.
What about a more recent clip? I'm glad you asked.
I think the Jews are evil people generally, but they're God's people and God's going to use them. I think the Jews are evil people generally. But
the Jews are evil people generally.
Jeez.
Oh my God.
That's bad.
I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah. And he's got the gall to associate evolutionary theory with the Nazis and will just say that outright. Wow. That
2 minutes apart where he'll talk about that evolution was core to, Hitler coming up with his way of handling the Jews right after talking about that everyone should go out and read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and that they can call his office to get copies of it, that he's willing to distribute it to anyone who wants it.
Yeah, it also showed the Fourth Reich of the Rich, which is, I think, equally bad.
It's about as bad, yes.
It's like on the same level of these people who spread like the idea of blood libel of the Jews.
Right.
It's pretty much that.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I know that there's a strain of anti-Semitism that runs through evangelical kind of Baptist circles. And a lot of the pro Zion stance that they have oftentimes is just because they're trying to fulfill the Armageddon predictions in the Bible. And ultimately it will involve the death of us, all of us non-believers, Jews and atheists, Hindus and everybody. It's all going to be roasted alive in fire. So it's a pretty inherently kind of anti-Semitic faith when you lay out what their plan is.
Right. For them to be pro-Israel because it's going to bring upon the end times and that they still believe that all Jews are heretics. They're going to be burning in hellfire for the rest of eternity.
I don't know if this is a hot take, but I don't think you can be pro-Israel without supporting the subjugation and persecution of the Palestinian people. I mean, they're suffering.
That's actually the context that I got that later clip from. it's him talking about who he favors within the Palestinian or Israeli conflict, and so that's where he's like, he basically says, I'm not in favor of the Palestinians, but I also think the Jews are evil people generally, but they're God's chosen people, and he's going to use them to bring upon the end time. So it was a very much tribulation type view. But the fact that he threw in the Jews are an evil people generally.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Fuck, unbelievable.
Yeah, subscribe to your channel.
Yep.
Only
generally.
Just generally, yes.
There's some of them are
exceptions. There's some good ones out there.
Yeah. Oh Jesus.
Yeah, that's just that was pretty atrocious. And I just want to address for some of the chat that's been going on in the side comments, like I just want to say, like, Hitler did not accept the theory of evolution, right? He pulled from it what he found convenient, and he rejected the rest. He did not accept universal common ancestry. There was no way in hell that he would accept that his pure Aryan race shared a common ancestry with the dirty mongrel races and with monkeys and Africans. With, like, you know, all the animals and plants. Hitler rejected that outright. So
I'm pretty sure they burned copies of On the Origin at some point, right?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yes, they did. So did the Soviets. And Kent says that Hitler thought that some races were more ape than others. Just that shows he doesn't understand evolution, if that's true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So largely, like, whenever you hear the critique, like, oh, this stuff leads to social Darwinism, and it's like, yeah, the people that are trying to do eugenics or the Nazis or these like neo-Nazi groups, these people do not understand how evolution works, or their views would not be what they are. Like, that you can't hold an actual proper understanding of the science of natural selection and evolution and also think that like racism is true.
Right.
Like, well, I said in one of my recent videos that even if a scientific theory has a bad outcome for humans, that doesn't mean it's not true. Because like climate change has a very bad prediction for us, and it's caused by humans. But that doesn't mean it's not true. Of course,
E equals MC squared basically led to the atom bomb. Doesn't mean E equals MC squared is false.
That's a good point.
Well, and then the other thing about the creationist model, that all of humanity is descended from Noah's 3 sons. Therefore, and that was only 4,400 years ago. So all the variation we see within humanity must have come from those 3 sons. Their explanation for that is that it was Ham's son, Canaan, who was cursed because Ham saw Noah naked. Canaan was cursed, and then he became black from the curse
because Noah was so drunk.
Yes, right, because Noah was drunk, and you're not supposed to see your dad drunk and naked, apparently. But Ham looked, and then his son was cursed, and that was the lineage that ended up becoming the Africans, which is, you know, back in the, you know, this during chattel slavery, that was used as justification for why it was okay to hold blacks as slaves, because he was cursed and was supposed to work for Noah's other sons.
Yeah, and that's a good counter argument, I think, because people, if you're saying, well, Hitler used the theory of evolution to justify his racism, well, people use the Bible to justify not freeing the slaves,
specifically the creation story. And they still do today. Like, there are people who do really believe that.
If you look at any KKK organization, they're universally creationists.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't even have to look that far. I used to live where there was actually this really, well, I don't want to say great restaurant, but the food and the ambiance was great. And then you go in and you find out that actually, hey, none of the employees are being paid. Everyone is a part of like a religious cult that like has a compound outside the city. And all these people are just given, you know, room and board, and they live on the compound, and they're part of this cult. And no black people because they're the sons of Ham, and they like literally, I mean, they have all of this same ideology. They're religious fundamentalists, Christian religious fundamentalists.
Wait, there's no black people on the compound?
They don't let black people work at the restaurant. They don't let them on the compound because they're the sons of Ham, and they're the other.
Yes.
So
that's what they believe.
Oh.
I'm very surprised that no legal actions have befallen. I mean, they're all over the nation. It's not a local chain. Like
there is a whole subset of. I mean, we can call them creationists. That's what they are.
They're not
so focused on arguing over Genesis and evolution and Adam and Eve, but there's a huge chunk of fundamentalist Christianity here in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries, that focuses on those lineages from Noah, and they care very much about that, and they pay attention to which tribes of Israel and where they ended up in the different parts of the world, and a lot of it is very, very racist because a lot of it just comes out of that mythology. That Ham was cursed because he saw
anyone
Noah
want a shot at this? Sunflower is still in the comments confused about how eugenics could possibly be incompatible with the science of natural selection and evolution. He says he's baffled by this.
Yeah,
I'll take a stab at it.
Oh, go AJ. Yep.
Okay, well, I'll be quick. I would just say that Hitler and eugenicists, they thought that you could get the best sort of stock or the best quality of genetics by breeding within close to your race, preserving the Aryan race. Whereas Darwin and evolution teaches the exact opposite, that genetic diversity is better. And what we found is that when you breed closer to your race, that's called inbreeding, and that causes genetic defects and mutations that are always bad, that are actually always bad. So I guess you can go ahead, Mark. I don't know if that was a good point or not.
Yeah, and the whole idea that we can look at sort of physical traits and determine who is good for the survival of humanity and who isn't necessarily something we can do anymore. I use the example of Stephen Hawking, who, if you were looking at it purely eugenics, you would say, hey, Stephen Hawking is disabled. He has this, horrible genetic defect. We should get rid of him. But our rationality says someone like Stephen Hawking can contribute more than me, more than maybe anybody at this panel. Like, just because somebody seems to be, genetically inferior, whatever that means, because that doesn't really mean anything in biology. It doesn't mean that they can't contribute to the knowledge of humanity and therefore help us immensely. So, that's why eugenics doesn't work, because you cannot tell who is going to aid humanity just by looking at their genetic sequence or looking at their
arbitrary.
Physical properties.
Human whim.
And I think
somebody you might see as genetically inferior in Africa may come up with a solution to the water problem, may come up with a solution to, refertilizing deserts, may come up with a solution for this. We cannot judge through mere genetics alone who is going to innovate our civilization. So that's why.
And
okay, so Sunflower, have you been listening to any of that?
Yes, I have. I'm still a little bit incredulous of the way you guys are reacting, because the way you guys are responding, it's almost as if this is the first time you're hearing about the fact that eugenicists use Darwinian evolution to justify their beliefs. Okay, so you're not okay. So let's get that out of the way first. So this isn't the first time you're hearing about this claim. You're not like, what? There's people that wait a second. There's people that are using that to define what? How are they saying? Okay, so
right, you're saying nobody did that. Okay. And appropriating, cherry picking from evolution to fit their preconceived notions, rather than them actually understanding what evolution actually says.
Well, explain to me how. I still am not sure how it's incompatible, because you could simply like. Are you aware that
I'll summarize it thusly, Sunflower. If a human is picking who they think is most fit, then it's not natural selection, because the human doesn't know who's more fit than who. Okay, we don't have any. It's an arbitrary metric.
Artificial selection is not natural selection.
Yeah.
Well, but you could just say that Darwin had the tip of the iceberg. He didn't include all forms of evolution. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's still the base. The most foundational level could still be like based on Darwinian evolution, natural selection, and then you just the same way that we include artificial selection in evolution, in the definition of evolution today. Why would that not just neatly get tucked under the eugenicist way of, also picking fitness?
Your question was why they're not compatible with each other. That's why.
Yeah. So do you also think that Darwinian evolution is incompatible with artificial selection? Because they're definitely not incompatible.
That's a different question.
That's exactly what you just alluded. That's what you just said.
Different.
No, wait.
Darwinian evolution is natural selection. Like, do you know the full name of Darwin's book? It's the descent of races through natural selection.
And if that's compatible with artificial selection, then I don't see how you're saying that Darwinian evolution is compatible with artificial selection, but incompatible with eugenics. How are you?
Artificial selection is not natural selection, right?
Okay, I think I understand Sunflower's misunderstanding.
Natural selection underlies all the human, like all the humans that exist. You have to, like, we're not evolving in real time. So, like, they still are using natural Darwinian
Sunflower.
Evolution. See how we got it?
We don't use Darwinian evolution anymore, right? That has moved on to different sort of theorems about how evolution works. We don't actually use
but we evolved over how many thousands of years?
Okay, that aside, let's put that aside for 1 second. So we don't use Darwinian evolution to describe evolution anymore. It's sort of gone into a sort of different type, which is and I'm struggling to remember the name. It's sort of I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, we don't necessarily use Darwinian evolution. And Darwinian evolution, when you quote it, what it says is the descent of races through natural selection. That's what it says to me when you quote it, kind of thing, because it only describes what is happening in the natural world. So as opposed to eugenics, right? Because eugenics is the killing of anybody that doesn't meet certain genetic criteria, right? Would you
I don't think it necessitates killing. No, I don't think I do not believe that the definition.
So what do you think eugenics is? What is your definition of eugenics?
My understanding is that it's just selective breeding to basically select for preferable genetic traits.
Okay.
That's basically all it is.
Are we talking about in the context of how Hitler used it?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's
not necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily.
So if you want beneficial genetic traits, why should we do artificial selection, which is what you're describing, which is sort of very hit and miss? It's very messy. It doesn't get you exactly what you want. Why wouldn't we go to direct genetic manipulation instead?
We don't have that capability yet, but how is that even the on topic? How's that?
We don't have the capability to artificially select exactly what we want yet.
Right. My issue is that people are going to try, not that they're going to succeed. Again, I'm not the one that I don't believe that you can successfully be a eugenicist. I was originally concerned, and this is how this whole thing happened, is that some of the Darwinian ideas lend themselves to eugenicists. That was actually the only thing I posed. I said, does Darwinian evolution lend itself to eugenicists? That was the original question. It went off on a whole thing. The answer originally from base theory was just no, LOL, which is interesting. But again, I don't think you can be a successful eugenicist. But I do think that if you have a very rigid and maybe too zoomed in or too
what's the
confined
point to make?
The point I'm trying to make is that Darwinian evolution, when isolated and sort of looked at outside of context, it can very easily lend itself to eugenicists, and that's the only point I originally made.
I'm going to disagree, and the reason is that
Dr. Chris agreed.
I just want to say this really quickly, that even if you say that you don't have to kill people in order to do eugenics, the idea with eugenics is that it's like planned breeding. So you stop certain people from breeding by castrating them. That's how eugenics is put into practice. That's how we put into practice.
I'm going to disagree a little bit with the rest of the panel. Agree that yes, right. Some of that would be qualified as artificial selection to some degree. And yes, Darwin did talk, as Dr. Dan was pointing out in the comments. Of course, Darwin talked about artificial selection. In fact, he wrote a book called "The Variation of Animals and Plants Under Domestication," which was part of his core argument for the process of natural selection, that nature itself can do the selection. right? Like, of course, we knew about artificial selection before we knew about natural selection. Well, at least until Darwin described it. But like lots of things and lots of ideas can be used for very bad ends.
Thank you.
Doesn't make the original ideas wrong or immoral.
Oh, thank you so much.
I agree. Eugenics is bad. We shouldn't do it. That doesn't mean that you have to do eugenics.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say something before you go. I've just sort of had my hand up, so I just want to say something very quickly. It would be like saying that, I just want to add on something to Josh Chris. It'd be like saying that nuclear fission leads to nuclear war.
Yes.
Like, that's not necessarily the case. You can't sort of say nuclear fission is bad because nuclear weapons came from it. We've also made power plants and things to help us. So I think that isn't a good argument, Sunflower.
And I just want to make the point that we also had eugenics before we had Darwin, like maybe not by that name, but like look at the Spartan Society, for example. Sure. They had no knowledge of natural selection or evolution, and yet they were doing eugenics. They were disposing of their young that were not suitable. And look what happened to them. Like, they got out-competed by those that were not doing eugenics, because ultimately eugenics is not the best thing to do for your population.
Absolutely. 100%.
You want a lot of genetic diversity so you can handle lots of different environmental changes.
Right.
Okay, so first of all, I agree with you 100%, Dr. Chris. You're absolutely right. I'm not saying that somehow that like the fact that it could be used for bad means like all of a sudden that makes it not true. Not what I was saying. I actually posed again. I if you look at the I don't expect you to, but look at the chat log. I literally just basically said, like, does this lend itself to Genesis potentially? And the overall response was no, you don't understand Darwin. No, wrong, no. Now, if someone just said like it could, but that like, yes, it could, and it has, but it's still.
I don't think that eugenics is a natural consequence of the fact that science has settled on as natural selection as a mechanism to explain descent with modification. There are some people who may draw that conclusion. Those people are wrong. And, you know, and it's not even necessary to have evolution as an example of that kind of eugenics program. As Grayson pointed out, the Spartans basically did that. It's just, and I think it basically has to do with the fact that we know for millennia that there's variation that exists, that there are heritable components. I think there's just something core to our understanding of like life just kind of works that way, and that we could potentially modify animals and make changes. That's why we had artificial selection and why we could domesticate plants and animals. But it was Darwin who just made that logical leap that almost seems obvious in retrospect, but that was his brilliance in it, and just stating that nature can do the same thing. And over a long enough period of time, it means that you can explain the vast web of life, and that it can go back a very, very long time.
Sure. Yes, Sunflower. I think that the problem is the way that you phrase the question. When you say leads to, it sort of says that
lends itself to,
or even lends itself to. Right?
It means those are very different things. Yeah. Well, are you kidding? Are you laughing?
Yes.
What leads to is an ultimatum. Leads to means it necessarily leads to it. Lends itself to just means like it's readily accessible to be used for. It doesn't, of course, it doesn't lead to it necessarily, but it definitely lends itself to it. Those are very different things. What are you laughing about?
You can come to eugenics conclusions without having any knowledge or having any basis on Darwinian natural selection. That's
you can, but I would ask what else lends itself to eugenics more than
I would say the creation model lends itself to eugenics.
Really?
Well, I think that the problem is
the model that
modern
men and women are creating
modern synthesis in evolution, it doesn't lend itself to it, because if you understand evolution, limiting that gene pool is necessarily bad. This is what Grayson was trying to get across. So it doesn't, if you understand, like when you said, oh, people have taken it out of context and stuff and done, you totally agree with you. Yes, people have taken it out of context, but that is a sort of a straw man of the actual evolution theory of evolution that they've taken, right? So a misunderstanding of evolution may lend itself to eugenics, but evolution itself does not lend itself to eugenics, because what you understand is that is actively bad for the species.
It's not actively bad. Well, for one thing, it's not only that.
Eugenics.
Are you aware that Are you aware that sperm donor banks, there literally are very strict criteria of your genetics in order for you to donate sperm? Are you aware of that? Yes or no?
Yep.
Would you classify that as eugenics?
No.
You're saying that's not eugenics. So saying that you have to have a certain IQ, a certain height. You're saying that you can't donate sperm. You're saying
that's not part of sperm donation. You're creating a straw man. That doesn't exist. They don't have IQ tests for sperm donors. I can test.
I believe they actually do.
I did sperm before. I didn't have to take an IQ test.
So, Sunflower, I've donated sperm. They do not ask you an IQ test.
You donated sperm to be used for insemination?
Yes.
Okay.
I got a whole lot of little mini Graysons.
Okay. All right. Fine. No IQ test. I guess I was wrong. Were there other things about like height, minimum height?
No.
There's no
minimum height.
No.
Sunflower, I'll tell you what they asked me. They asked me, do I have a history of cancer in my family? Because some people might not want that.
Certain mental illnesses that are heritable
STDs.
in my family. That's what they asked.
Yeah.
What if you have if you have Down syndrome? Do you think you can donate sperm for that? Wait, if you have Down syndrome,
take Down syndrome patients.
You can donate sperm if you have trisomy 23?
No. They certainly won't take someone who's Down syndrome. First of all, I don't think you can, if you're at trisomy 21 is what it is. It's not trisomy 23.
I meant 21.
But if it's trisomy 21, if you have a patient that has Down syndrome, they can't really consent on their own. They're not.
Okay. Pick any other genetic. If you have hemophilia, can you donate sperm if you have hemophilia?
What?
You think you can donate sperm if you have hemophilia?
Okay, I think that.
Just a question. I want to ask, please. I want to ask.
What you're misunderstanding here is that
are there certain genetic traits?
I'm gonna mute you if you don't stop.
Well, answer the question.
Okay, you know the answer. No, if you have a genetic mutation, like a disease or something, you're not going to be donating sperm.
Right.
But here's why it's not eugenics. Right. Eugenics is saying, here, we're going to take away this person's ability to reproduce.
No,
right?
it's not. That's not eugenics. Look at the definition.
Well, I'm pretty sure every kind of eugenics involves taking away a certain subpopulation's ability to reproduce.
You're absolutely wrong. That's not what it is.
Are you
eugenics is planned breeding.
If we don't
planned breeding,
with Down syndrome to mate,
not sterilizing, killing people.
Is it eugenics to not allow kids who have Down syndrome to mate and make babies? Is that eugenics?
I would say no, it's not, because
history tells us the answer is
Isn't
yes.
It?
No, it's not.
Every single animal, every single human being allowed to mate. And
wait.
That would be eugenics. If you make one person, restrict their ability to this is someone who has Down syndrome. Perhaps we shouldn't encourage them to make babies because we know that can result in children that also have severe genetic disorders. You're talking about individuals, even though they may be over the age of 18, but they have the mind of a 5-year-old. And you're going to call that eugenics?
Hold on.
Can I just bring something up? I found an article about where they did do an IQ sperm bank, right? They basically
it does exist. Okay, good.
No. Let me finish, Sunflower. Why don't you let me finish?
Well, good, I wasn't wrong. wrong.
Oh my god.
Because 217 children were born through this elite sperm bank, which is now shut down. So basically, the problem was that a lot of the people went in there expecting there to be, off the charts cognitive for their children, and that didn't happen, right? So this eugenics program didn't work. In fact, 3 turned out to have developmental disorders. So it didn't actually work as they tried to make it. So eugenics fails to account for the importance of diversity in our gene pool, which protects against disease and congenital disabilities. Above all, it commoditizes us no different than our most common sort of selective breeding. The genius sperm experiment had one objectively good outcome. In a strange twist of irony, it caused a change in sperm donor policy, shifting freedom of choice from doctors and sperm bank to the recipient mothers. Somehow, an elitist pregnancy program made sperm choice equal and fair.
Well, I completely agree that eugenics doesn't work. I'm worried that Darwinism can lend itself to eugenics. I don't think eugenics can work ever. I'm very much.
We just showed why Darwinism or like the theory of evolution does not lend itself to eugenics because it's only a misunderstanding of the theory of evolution.
Well, wait. This is why I think that's not true, though, because you can have sufficient genetic diversity by just simply not saying, okay, we're going to take this one small village and interbreed them. What if you just say we're going to take this one small village and not breed with them? Now you still have access to like 99% of the breeding pool of humans.
Are you saying that that's eugenics? Because like we had a system of segregation in this country for a long time.
That
and
miscegenation
was completely illegal, and that was actually entirely based on a biblical understanding.
So then the caste system in India is eugenics then, and that predated Darwin by
early
several thousand years.
Yeah, it's an early form of it.
Okay, so then you're admitting that eugenics does not have a strict association with Darwinism, and it
Darwinism it lends itself to it. It's like saying racism existed before Darwin. Obviously, what do you mean?
Sunflower. That's the last thing I'm going to ask you about this, right? All modern societies today accept the theory of evolution in terms of their intelligentsia, in terms of their like state actors, in terms of like their overall like academics, overall consensus accepts the theory of evolution, and yet none of them have gone down a eugenics route like in modern times, right? So you think that maybe it's a little bit multifactorial, and it's not so cut and paste as evolution leads to eugenics. Maybe that's
tons of modern societies have and still are exhibiting. What do you mean? Like, look at Japan. You could say, it's not like there's no explicit thing, but like you could definitely make an argument that they're trying to sort of like keep the Japanese breeding with other Japanese. You can make the argument.
What are you talking about? Japan's fine. Like
they don't
people married to Japanese people in Japan.
It's very, very hard to immigrate there, and there's a high level of...
That's because they don't have a lot of space, Sunflower. That's not because they're trying to breed.
I also have first-hand experience here where, like, I was in a long-term relationship with someone in Japan, and, like, I was able to move to Japan and have babies. They wanted to incentivize that because they need more babies in Japan, and they didn't care if I was Japanese or not. They just wanted to help them have more Japanese babies.
A, that's anecdotal. B, just look at the rates of immigration. Literally Google the rates of immigration to Japan. It's like literally less than 100, I think. Like on average.
Hey, Sunflower, if I marry a Japanese woman, I can immigrate to Japan. It's not like the Japanese government will stop me.
Yeah, well, it's one of the hardest countries to immigrate to. It's one of the hardest countries to immigrate to. That's I'm not making that up.
All it takes to immigrate there is to get into a marriage with a Japanese person. Right?
I'm sure there's still more.
Obviously, they're not enforcing nationalistic eugenics.
Right? Is that eugenics?
Of course, not explicitly. Yeah, I know. What do you mean?
Have you ever been to Japan, Sunflower? Have you ever actually gone to Japan?
Dude, you guys are not real.
No, Sunflower. It's a question. Have you been to Japan?
Yeah, no, I haven't been to Japan, Mark. No, I haven't been to Japan, Mark.
You haven't even been there.
You're misconstruing my point here. You're basically saying that as long as no one explicitly writes like that it's illegal to have babies with another race into their code of law, you're arguing that there's no reason to believe that there's any such thing happening. I mean, come on.
It's just that there are other reasons people do stuff besides eugenics. It's not because the whole purpose of eugenics is to breed a better human through selecting who breeds and who doesn't. But that's not what the Japanese are doing. Yeah, that just isn't, Sunflower. I'm sorry.
Hold on, Sunflower. My whole point was that most of the modern developed world today adheres to the theory of evolution like we did in the past. Now, in the past, in the early part of the 20th century, you had a high point of eugenics. But then all of a sudden, eugenic behaviors and tendencies started to go down. And you know what was curious? The acceptance of the theory of evolution did not go down. No. Like, it stayed constant. It's still the consensus.
Yeah.
Like, and yet, all the eugenics tendencies have gone down. It's almost as if these two things are not correlated.
That is what you just said, frankly, means nothing. I mean, what are you saying?
Well, let's apply the same argument the other way.
Like,
It means that there is no correlation between acceptance of the theory of evolution and practice of eugenics.
You can never quantify that with whatever you just rattled off. That doesn't quantify what you're saying.
You said the caste system was eugenics. You said the Spartans did eugenics. Literally all of these.
I said that Darwinian evolution can lend itself to genetics. That's all I've said.
Okay, so let's take this argument the other way, right? So does that mean that because people who have believed in Christian ideals have done inquisitions, killed the Cathars, killed the Lombards, that Christianity lends itself to massacres?
Again, not necessarily. I mean, you can make an argument for that. I'd be here to listen to it, but I'm saying, like, there are obviously.
So what was the cause of the inquisitions? Was that religious beliefs, or was that not?
I'm not going to get into like a freaking historical political debate or I'm not even defending the Inquisitions. So I don't know what
selectively determining the causation of these things, because when
never said causation, nope, that's not fair.
Well, when it lends itself to it,
it existed already, and then something came along that, while might have a lot of truth to it, might also inadvertently, unintentionally lend itself to eugenicists and racists. That's all I'm saying. That's not even a crazy thought. It's not even a crazy thing. But you guys like,
and Christianity can easily lend itself to genocide.
Frame me as saying
so people
you have
each other.
Proponents saying that Jews are evil people generally, right?
Yep.
Yes. I think it's not the argument you're making, it's the implication of the argument. So it seems like you're saying this to say because you can associate eugenics with Darwinian evolution, that it's not true.
Okay, and that's a good point. And and that's
no, it's not a good point. It's not a good argument.
No, it's a good point to
bring that your point.
No, I'm saying what you just brought up is a good point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's why when people have pressed me on that, I've said that's true. It has nothing to do with whether it's true or not. So then we could have left it at that. But when I say stuff like this, if you just respond like Atheist Junior just did, then that's fine. But when people start saying it like, no, dude, it doesn't even lend itself to it. We don't know what you're talking about. That's crazy. What do you mean? No, wrong. It's like, I'm obviously going to defend myself, and I'm obviously going to act like you guys know it's not what I'm saying. Isn't some crazy belief that I pulled out of
sunflower. Take a breath. No, Grayson, just a sec. Sunflower. Take a breath, mate. You're sort of feeling like you're getting really, really upset. So let's just take a sec, because I'm getting a bit frustrated as well. So let's take a sec, and I'll calm down as well, kind of thing, because I'm getting a bit frustrated.
Fair enough.
And I just want to. Sorry, Grayson, go ahead. I did interrupt.
I was going to ask about sports, right? Because in sports, you naturally have winners and you have losers. Now, does having sports foster the idea that some people are more fit than others? And does sports lend itself to eugenics, according to your definition?
Wait a second. Sports is not the same as procreate. Like it's not procreation of our species.
Well, you agree that certain people, right, will want to have mates with the idea that their children will be good athletes. You agree that this happens quite.
You could have an infertile athlete that's really great, and that would be incompatible.
Okay, well, you're talking about an edge case. I asked you a very.
No, I'm saying why sports specifically is not related to fitness in the traditional eugenicist sense. You can't use it because it's not.
It is.
No, not if they're not. The ability to reproduce is going to supersede sports every time.
Right. What we're talking about, people specifically like choosing their mating partners and practices to create progeny that will be good at sports, which I think everyone agrees does happen. I know several people that have done that exact thing. And having sports lends itself to like the idea that some people are more fit than others. Some people, like Michael Phelps, is going to be a great swimmer. Just naturally, that is how he's like the proportioned. So like, does having sports in our society lend itself to eugenics? Because some people
might on a small level. Yeah, I'd say on a small level, I say that sports isn't an important enough factor for most people's lives. Like most people want a healthy, intelligent child that's going to live a
theory
long
of
time.
Evolution is not a big factor for most people's lives.
Well, wait, no,
And
well,
I know,
no, wait, it is,
I know
because
some
you wanna-
people where
you wanna-
sports are
you wanna
huge
re-
in their life, mate.
Wait,
like I
most
know some people that sports are everything, you know.
Well, yeah, that's true. I agree, and that's why I said it might. Yeah, I'd say sports. It might have a little. If sure, I'm
Grayson,
sure it has a little bit of a factor.
Are you using
but,
fit in the Darwinian like definition, or fit
No.
as in like physically fit?
Yeah, no, fit in Darwinian
Yeah,
evolution is like
physically
most.
fit. When I'm talking about sports,
people,
I'm not talking anything about like selection or evolution. I'm just talking about like how it can cause certain eugenicist tendencies.
I agree.
In people.
Yeah,
Okay,
on
so
a
you
small
agree,
scale.
Sunflower. So then I think that your comment that evolution can tend to eugenics is just about as worthless as saying sports can tend to eugenics. Like,
well,
and plus to AJ's point, it doesn't ultimately affect whether it's true or not.
Well, okay, and an argument could actually be made for that. Like, I don't know what.
Okay.
What does that
That
prove
was my
exactly?
point. Like, what difference does it make? Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we're done with this then.
I agree. Yeah.
Get there.
All you just
like-
do is
like,
that sports might do harm. I mean, yeah.
I just want to make one more analogy that people
true.
did use sort of the Bible as a justification for slavery. And it would be like that saying that Christianity lends itself to slavery, but it's not. It's the misunderstanding of Christianity that would, or the misunderstanding of the Bible that would lend itself to slavery. So that's kind of the analogy that we're making, that if you do understand it like you understand the Bible, it wouldn't lend itself to slavery because of what is there and what it says, kind of thing. Do you understand that?
I get what you're saying, but I just don't agree with your conclusion. I think that you know, this in a vacuum, the concept and theory of Darwinian evolution way more readily lends itself to, I'd say, eugenics and racism than the Bible ever does. Of course, there are people that might use the Bible. I'm just curious how exactly, like on the top of your head, what's the best like overall theme from the Bible that would support eugenicists and racism?
Well,
I'm
just 1 second. Just 1 second. I just want to address that for a second, because as I said, we don't use Darwinian evolution anymore, right? So it's one of those things that we've said, hey, that was the origin point of evolution, but it's the modern synthesis, or there's another synthesis now. There's I can't remember. Well, no, there's another one. There's like a one that includes all of the outer stuff. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me.
And sunflower.
Yeah, it includes all of that. But just a second, Grayson. Just a sec. Sorry, mate. Okay, so that answers that. So when you say Darwinian evolution, we're not even following that anymore. So
I have an issue with that, though.
I take issue
with that because
it doesn't lend itself in the first place, because that's not how it was applied. If you misunderstood it, yeah, maybe, but that's a misunderstanding.
Okay, but wait, Mark, can I interject really quick?
Well, just get beyond your second question. Your second question would what in the Bible would lend yourself to slavery? It would be the Old Testament.
Okay, sorry, I meant eugenics, specifically race-based or eugenic.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, and which people
Curse
are
of Ham,
enslaving?
the treatment of the Amalekites, the treatment of the
the Canaanites.
Yeah.
The Bible specifically is like an instruction manual on how to establish a patriarchal Jewish society where you own indentured servants.
Where
them from the
so
lands
you're saying
around you.
Christians are enslaving people based on whether or not they're Jewish?
No, but it's
so that's why you can't make a lateral claim.
You totally misinterpreted what I said.
So it specifically says, Sunflower specifically says, buy your slaves from the lands around you, like from foreigners around you, kind of thing. So a misunderstanding of that and the historical context of that would be, it's okay to have African people as slaves because they are the foreigners from the lands around us.
And do you remember the part where Jesus called a woman no better than a dog because she was not Jewish?
Okay, look, you can obviously make the case that all sorts of texts, including the Bible, lends itself to eugenicism, I'm gonna say that
you just said that you couldn't do that for the Bible, though. That's why.
I said you can make the case. I don't think it does. You can make the case. I can make the case that 2 + 2 = 4 lends itself to eugenicism. I don't think it does at all. I think that ultimately Darwinian evolution, because look, men and women are created in God's image. To me, it's in Genesis, the first chapter of the new. So, all you need is that to me, and you automatically treat other humans and do unto others. There's another good one. So. You can cherry pick.
So let me just read what Jesus said, right? I'll just read what Jesus said, right? It said the woman
aren't really enslaved.
Jesus
slavery
and knelt
is more of a
before
political
him.
thing.
He said, "Lord, help me," she said. And Jesus replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." He literally said, "I'm not going to help you because you are not part of the children. You are not an Israelite. It's not right to give our food to the dogs." I mean, come on.
Saying men and women are created equal doesn't say anything about LGBT people either.
What?
Okay, I just want to interrupt. Sorry, I'll interrupt for 1 second. Dr. Ian Chen is taking his leave, probably going back to do some research on,
I didn't want to interrupt you guys, so thank you for that, Mark.
No, it's okay.
Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Base Theory, Grayson, for swapping the dates, and really enjoyed it. So hope you guys enjoyed as well. So thanks so
much, Ian. You did great, mate. You did fantastic.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Thank you. See you guys later. Bye.
Yep.
Bye, Ian. Sorry, guys.
So last thing I'll say on this: if you saw Christians across all cultures and countries saying, "In the name of Christianity, I declare you other than me, and therefore I'm going to take you as a slave," you might have a case, but it turns out that it's been way more of a political and historical issue. The same reason that it's unfair to target Christians in Africa or Muslims in Africa, and all of a sudden say the religion is causing that when as bad or worse was happening before then.
Yeah.
So
that's the exact point that we were making to you.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No,
yes,
it's not,
is.
because
Yes,
science is not cultural in this sense, right? You would agree with that science is not cultural?
No.
But the cultural understanding of and thank you. Actually, so for something, please. There's just something that Dr. Dan said. Thank you so much. It's integrated synthesis. Thank you so much. That would have driven me crazy. So thank you for iterating that and letting me know. But yeah, it's not like the cultural understanding of integrated synthesis really lends itself to eugenics either. And you just said, if it happened in all places at all times, then you might have a point. And that I would like to repeat the same back to you. If it happened at all places and all cultures at all times, you might have a point. So yeah, Grayson is correct. That's the point that we were trying to make. It doesn't lend itself to
but okay, eugenics. So you're saying it doesn't. You're aware of the fact that the argument's been raised, and there are some people, however fringe they are trying to use it. So, but you're saying it also doesn't lend itself. Where are the people that are actively saying look, it's very clear, it's right here in the Bible.
The World Church of the Creator,
black people are less than white people. Where?
Yeah,
I've
never Church of the Creator
in Africa.
Heard of the Ku Klux Klan?
Yes, right. There's all kinds of distinct, religious organizations in the United States. I'm mentioning one, the World Church of the Creator, which their basis is that the white race University race, and it's all based on the biblical flood story that Japhet was collected. I don't
know. That's exceedingly fringe. I feel like.
Well, I would then say that they have at least lended itself to taking that interpretation. Wouldn't you agree?
I don't. Okay, I mean, I guess you could make that argument.
I would agree that eugenics is also exceedingly fringe at this point as well.
Bob Jones University only started allowing interracial marriage in the year 2000.
I think it's growing, actually, the eugenics idea.
Eugenics?
What? Yeah, well, the idea that
promoting eugenics.
Can we agree on a definition of eugenics, possibly?
Is this going to be some weird thing where you say vaccines are eugenics
or
something?
People are socially savvy enough not to literally post on their Twitter bio
talk about white genocide.
Proud eugenicist. No, what? No.
Yeah, where do you think eugenics is getting worse in the world right now, Sunflower?
Right.
Replacement.
I don't know. Honestly, it's not even a crazy question.
You don't know. But it is. It's getting worse, but you don't know where it's worse. Look, Sunflower, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to back up some of these.
You want me to say you a paper? I'm speaking from observation. But
example.
What do you?
You're making
observations. Yeah, and I would say that. No, I generally do see an increased trend
Where?
in, like, I guess. Hold on, I was still talking. What do you mean? You literally interrupted me while I was talking.
You were
I
backpedaling.
see an increased trend in things like abortion if you can detect the child's going to have Down syndrome.
Okay, so
not
your
eugenics.
decision not to have a child that might have a genetic illness is eugenics.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
What?
It fully fits the definition. Look, if you see people with Down syndrome and they're alive and saying, "I'm glad I wasn't aborted. I don't want to die. I enjoyed my life," and then you see people saying, "If you can detect it as Down syndrome, you should kill it before it's born."
Do you think the people who have been victims of eugenics had a choice in the matter in the past?
Who have been victims of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the people made to reproduce.
They're dead. They never were born. What are you talking about?
Look, and I can speak about Down syndrome personally. I had an uncle who had Down syndrome. I loved him very much. I was glad that he was around and that I got to live and experience with him. But I know for my grandmother, who ended up having him, it was an extraordinarily hard existence. It required enormous care. It took a huge chunk of her life taking care of this kid. And
so better not to have ever been born. What are you saying? That's better that he was never. Are you saying better he was never born?
I can understand why there would be a personal decision that someone would make that they don't want to commit to 50, 60 years of taking care of someone who is going to have basically the mental capacity of a 5-year-old for the rest of their life, and that they are very, very likely to die a horrible death of having their brain liquefy in basically a pool of Alzheimer's, which is generally something that most people with Down syndrome end up dying of.
And I disagree with you saying that the victims of eugenics are just people who never got a chance to live, because part of eugenics, like I said, is sterilizing people so they can't breed. That's another way that you control breeding. And those people did.
And that's bad too. And that's bad too. What do you mean?
But they're included in eugenics. But
I consider that also bad.
They didn't have a choice in the matter. It's different when
I consider that bad
about their own child.
I think that's also bad. What do you mean? I'm not condoning that.
But
and I don't think
abortion is under the definition of eugenics. I don't think that's
whether or not it is. How does the thing you just brought up? I don't accept or condone what you just brought up either. So how does whether or not that's abortion have anything to do with what I'm saying?
I don't think it falls under eugenics, because the whole idea of eugenics is that you selectively kill and breed people.
No, that's not eugenics, Mark. Sorry, that is not the definition of eugenics, man.
I disagree with you. You're wrong.
You breed certain people and you don't.
So what definition should we use? I don't know. What do you guys want to use?
Told you.
No, you didn't. What is it? What
you were literally talking over Mark when he told you.
No, but why are we using Mark's definition? Can we use an actual definition of the word or the term? Anything. Give me something. What do you mean, Mark just told
you want to use?
Okay,
Mark
so
is it the dictionary of Mark Webster? What do you mean?
I'll get you a definition. How about that? I'll get you a definition.
Please.
Eugenics is the study of how to arrange reproduction with the human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable.
Exactly. That does not mean killing people. Not necessarily mean it does not mean sterilizing people.
How does that, from sort of edge cases and fringe cases, we know that a baby's going to be have some sort of genetic disorder. How does that apply to the population, which it says?
How does it apply? I think that people that are evil and government. So I'm saying, I don't.
I want to differentiate here between an individual's personal choice and a top-down organization structure of a eugenic structure.
Top-down don't control reproduction of a population.
If individuals are making choices about when they want to get pregnant or when they want to have an abortion, that does not constitute eugenics, because it's the individuals making the choice. It's not dictated top-down.
Yes,
eugenics does not have to be dictated from the top down.
That's not true. Yes, it does. It needs to have some specific specific guidelines that people have, some people that have decided these are the preferred traits that we want within our population, and we are going to control the population and selectively breed them so that the population shifts in that direction.
That's not a fair definition.
Sunflower, if you're disagreeing with that, then do you think that if I choose to like mate with a pretty lady versus if I don't want to mate with someone I'm not attracted to, is that eugenics to you because I'm somehow making the choice of who I mate with?
Let me respond first to watch. Again, you guys are dogpiling me, and you're not even using a working definition of the term. I'm the only one that is.
Oh, he read the definition.
What is your definition?
And that supports my
what's your definition of eugenics?
Fine. Well, the one Mark just read is perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so how about this? There's a community of people. Doesn't matter where they're from. We'll make up a fake place called Purple Country of Slovakia or whatever. And this community of people start talking to each other and say, "Hey, those people down in Orange Hill, we can tell that they're not as sharp or bright as us, and they don't really seem as whatever. Like they're not as successful as us in the world. And look, they have this color skin or this kind of hair, or this color eyes. Let's just not be with them." If there's a small village of people that start to say this amongst themselves, you don't have to have any actual law or restriction, but if they start believing it, and then they start finding mates and excluding certain races accordingly, I'd say that's very much eugenics. I don't know how.
So prejudice is eugenics, and you realize that prejudice
it can be,
and you realize that prejudice massively predates the theory of evolution, and the theory of evolution does not lend itself to prejudice.
Listen, you're saying that nothing that if something comes first, nothing that comes after can lend itself to it. Is that what you're saying?
No,
but if you understand,
what did you just try to detail there?
If you understand,
this is what I'm detailing.
Predates something.
This is what I'll detail. There is no correlation between percentage of a population that accepts the theory of evolution is true and the percentage of a population that is prejudiced. There's no correlation.
How do you know that? You're just making that up.
You are the one claiming that.
No, I'm saying a very specific theory, I think, lends itself. I'm admitting it's my opinion. I'm not saying
you have to admit that what you are saying is equivalent to what I just said. If you say the theory of evolution lends itself to more prejudice and eugenics, then you are saying that there's a correlation between, or there should be a correlation of what you're saying is true between the acceptance of theory of evolution and prejudice and eugenics. And no such correlation is observed.
If anyone studied that, which no one has, maybe I think the results would go in my favor. We don't have those numbers. We don't have those numbers, Grayson. Why are you acting like you know for a fact? Neither of us know. It's both of our opinions.
Because we have history. We have history.
And now you have egg on your face because you're speaking like you know for a fact. I'm admitting it's my opinion.
Positive claim.
So how does that one work? Square that circle.
Because
I'm admitting it's my opinion.
Claim and not demonstrating it. No, and I am showing you that
you're saying it's a fact that it's false.
Sunflower. You gotta stop talking while other people are talking. Look, I'm showing you that the history of humanity is a history of prejudice. In any group, in any society, in human history, there is always interethnic conflicts and ethnic prejudices. That is a constant throughout human history. And you are saying that the theory of evolution lends itself to increase the amount of prejudice and eugenic behavior that we would see. And I am telling you, there is no empirical or evidentiary basis for you to make that claim. You are saying that you don't know. It's your opinion. We're saying, okay, well, if you're not presenting any evidence, then we're going to reject it without any evidence. That's how the burden of proof works.
And your definition of eugenics is so wishy-washy that any type of sexual preference now counts as eugenics. The word has no meaning if you're going to make it that vague.
Hold on a second. First of all, if I were to go find data that said like people are interbreeding less, would that then like I haven't looked into it. I'm just one
interbreeding
like racially like race. No. I mean like if I'm not, I haven't looked into it, but if I did, and it said that like since Darwin, if there was a steady decline, if there were a steady increase in like intra-racial, like
it wouldn't, and
it wouldn't. That wouldn't. So then, what the fuck are you saying, dude? Now you sound like a fucking clown. Nothing could prove you wrong. Then
I don't. Because
what do you mean?
Even if what you were saying is true, that's just people making individual choices.
You've lost the point. Now you've lost. I'm done. You've lost. You've really lost.
Well, sunflower. Yeah. So it has to be Yeah, it just he agreed with the definition that I got out of Oxford. I think it's a perfectly fine definition, the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics.
Mark, do you want me to add him back in? I can.
It's up to you, man. I'm
oh wait, no, he just left. He got mad and left.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and sorry, Sunflower. Like, I realize that you're sort of saying, "Hey, that's my opinion," but you're sort of making a statement of fact that Darwinian evolution lends itself to eugenics, kind of thing. So that is a statement of fact. That is sort of a knowledge belief or a knowledge claim that we sort of say, well, you've got to back that up somehow. And yeah, we're going to push back on it because you seem to think that if I have some sort of genetic issue, right? So just say I have a genetic issue and I say, well, I'm not going to have children. I'm going to, have a vasectomy and I'm not going to have children because I don't want to pass that genetic problem on to my children, right? That is not eugenics, because what eugenics is, it is messing with the entire population kind of thing. So somebody making a choice about whether to have children or not is not eugenics. It's when the population is looked at, usually from above them, some people determining who mates with who or who does what, and then or the population itself going, hey, we want a genetically superior person. But it has to be the entire population, because single decisions within a population, sort of evolutionary speaking, is just sort of a blip on the radar. It just doesn't really influence the way that a race is going or a species is going. And so it has to be. Yeah.
I was going to say, practically speaking, yes, it would be true if it was the entire population making those decisions. But what we saw in the early part of the 20th century is that it was a select group, few people making those decisions for everyone else. And that the key part of your definition is the arrange part. Someone has to do the arranging. And so therefore, that's eugenics. Like it's happening at the population level. And you have at a minimum, a select few making that decision and arranging the population to selectively change the genetic milieu to what their selected preferred traits are.
Okay, I think that this is hilarious. He's posted in the chat that apparently from the NIH, he says the definition is eugenics is the scientifically inaccurate theory that humans can be improved through selective breeding of populations.
Yeah.
Sure, I would agree.
Totally scientifically inaccurate.
If he's admitting that in the definition it says it's scientifically inaccurate, then he is admitting that the scientifically accurate theory of evolution does not lend itself to the scientifically inaccurate theory of
eugenics. I was thinking that earlier. Like, if you want to say why is eugenics incompatible with Darwinian evolution or evolution in theory, one is scientific and one is not.
Yep.
So
one is accurate, one is not.
Yeah, and sort of, I know we don't have direct genetic manipulation yet, but eugenics doesn't work. In fact, it's incredibly detrimental to the people that do it. So, we can sort of cite all of these cases where it's been detrimental. So why we wouldn't try to aim for sort of direct genetic cures for these genetic diseases, I don't understand why that wouldn't be a vastly superior alternative kind of thing. It definitely would be way better.
Right? I think some people might argue that we have some sort of genetic editing like CRISPR. I don't really know about that type of stuff, but I will be the person to say that if I was in the position where I have the opportunity to not have a child that has Down syndrome, I would absolutely not do it. I would say, let's try again. And if that makes me like immoral, then I don't care.
No,
I want to clarify that the Chinese scientist that did the CRISPR editing of the first like human embryos has said, I think that was a couple of years ago, and he has said, I don't know all the details of the study and how those children are doing, but he has said that he regrets doing it and it was too soon. So
he regrets doing it because he's persona non grata across the entire world, including in China, and he did it secretly, and it was a huge scandal everywhere. So that's part of the reason why he regrets it. I think the kids are actually doing okay. He CRISPR edited them so that they would have the genetic variant that allows them to be less prone to getting HIV, is what they did.
Yes. cool. It was still a cool milestone. Hey, Ken Rock, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Unethical one though.
Sweet. I'm sorry, I won't take up too much of your time, but I had something to say off the conversation you guys were just having with that sunflower, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So if you look at the definition for evolution and eugenics, the two actually go against each other. Like they can't coexist.
You want to expound upon that?
Evolution will allow life itself in order to grow and expand to see what works and what doesn't work. Eugenics would be controlling that so that you can get the results that you want in particular.
Yeah.
So one is allowing life to expand, the other is keeping it narrow.
I think that that's the point that we were trying to touch on with natural versus artificial selection, and how like one is a part of the theory of evolution and one isn't really.
Definitely. Yes. I mean, eugenics is if anything, if you're going to take anything from evolution, obviously it's most closely related to artificial selection, where humans can pick certain favored variations within a breeding stock and then try to select for those traits. Of course, that can happen. It's not to say that wouldn't be possible amongst humans as well if we were to do that. But every time that we've done it, we've just kind of screwed it up. And and that what is favor? I mean, like first of all, it's highly unethical and highly immoral to like trying to manipulate the population to do those kinds of things.
I just have to highlight this really quick.
Yeah.
The Converted Man says that you are just suppressing evolution deep down inside so that you can continue to sin, which I think is so funny because we have all been told that at one point that we really do believe in God and Jesus, and we're just suppressing it so that we can keep our sinning lifestyles.
So morality really interests me, and the sort of the whole idea of what we ought to do and what ought not to do. And I just want to point out, because the debate did bring up morality slightly, is that with some of these emergent technologies that are coming, the Bible's never going to tell you how you ought to handle technology, right? It's never going to tell you, should we do cloning? Ought we do cloning? All you can do is read it and then take this inference and interpret the Bible however you want. We need a better system than theology to tell us, what we ought to do in the future. And that's sort of why I talk about the superiority of secular morality, being able to say, hey, what is our goal? What are we trying to do? If that's the well-being of humans, we can make decisions of what affects our well-being for the better and what affects our well-being for the worse. And it's complex, but I think that the problem I have with sort of theological morality that's based upon holy texts and ancient readings and stuff is they never ever have anything to offer for future they don't even have anything to offer for current morality, actually, so it's just interpretation at that point.
And I think that is a great point where we can kind of wrap up this conversation. Mark, I thought that was a great kind of...
Well, I've got one more point, and it's a point that maybe the creationists can use. It is it is a fact that we've kind of interrupted the evolutionary process. We have conformed our environment to us rather than the other way around. So medicine saves a lot of people that would have otherwise been selected against, right? So there's this question of, well, if we, allow everybody to survive, and our goal is for everybody to survive, what does that do to our genetic lineup? And because it's never happened before, we don't 100% know. And this has been brought up of, that causes the degradation of the genome.
Right.
And it is a fair point. It definitely is a fair point. However, I think that out there is direct genetic manipulation. It is being able to cure these diseases on a genetic level. Look, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to see what they can achieve. But I think we've got to go in with a better morality than, well, God wants us to do this. I think we've got to go, well, what of these technologies benefits us and what actually is to the detriment of humans? And eugenics is demonstrably to the detriment of humans. Like, there's no situation where it has ever helped and could never help, because we need that genetic diversity to make ourselves stronger and better. And as I said at the start, ideas don't just come from who we deem to be genetically good, because ideas and innovations and knowledge come from all kinds of people, whether they be, genetically superior or not.
And that I would say the other part of eugenics, it's just an immoral program, because if you operate from, some of the core principles of what's the best well-being for humanity and for everyone that exists, that's, if that's our starting point, well, eugenics is a deeply the antithesis.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think we're all on the same page here. I think that you guys put it a lot more eloquently than I could have. So I won't waste time by rehashing your points. All I will say is that, Mark, I saw Perth was a question on Jeopardy last week, and it made me think of you. So.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And,
said it was like one of the most beautiful places on earth. So our secret's out, where we've been sprung.
Yeah, big ups, Perth.
Thank you.
And so I thought this was a great discussion. It kind of got pretty fun there. Finally, we only had one creationist join tonight. So come on, guys, where are all the creationists at? Are you guys cowards? Are you running away from the conversation? I think we had, the meeting of the minds tonight. No creationists wanted to come forth except for Sunflower was, let's call it, brave enough to join. So good on you.
Look. I completely disagree with Sunflower. I respect that if he has a belief, he has a belief, but I don't think he can demonstrate it as knowledge kind of thing. I think it's just his belief based upon, his worldview kind of thing. And that's okay. I think he's wrong. We can disagree. That's all right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Grayson.
The debate tonight with Ian Chen, like I said, it's probably one of my favorites. It had me laughing at times. It had me going, oh, at other times. It had me saying wow, that was a great point that he brought up. So if you haven't checked out Ian Chen's debate, check out the full thing. Tell Ian what you thought about it. I thought he did a great job. And then my debate with Kent is coming up next towards the end of the month. I think it's on April 27th. So that one should be pretty good. It's my third and final debate with Kent. I don't want to do any more after this. This is the end game. This is the third, the finale. This is the return of the king. So everyone mark that on your calendars. It should be a pretty fun and funny night. And I will be doing an after show for that as well.
What's the date, sorry?
I think it's the 27th, I want to say.
Okay.
I've got some other debates coming up as well, but we'll cover them at a different time. That's the big fun one that's coming up for me. And then I've got a few more based theories coming up. I got to do my one on the hologram universe and black holes. That should be really cool. And then I'm doing one on the very strange mammals and mammalia forms during the dinosaur era. So those ones should keep me busy for a bit, but I'm really looking forward to them. They've been a lot of fun to research and make so far. So look out for those. Like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to Mark, subscribe to Dr. Chris. They make great videos. I'm watching their new videos and I learn a lot of new things. And I think that you guys should check them out too. So if anyone else has anything to add, they can, or if not, I will end the stream. Perfect. So